Welcome to the Virginia Civics and Economics Lecture Series. At the end of each slide, there will be a 5-second delay. Use this time to complete your notes. When you are done, push play and move on to the next slide. This presentation will begin in 5 seconds. Welcome to Virginia Civics and Economics Lecture 2.3 on Economic Systems, and let's talk about supermarkets. You know, farm fresh. Look at all the good stuff in there. And if you get hungry while you're in the store, you can go right to the in-store Starbucks. Wait a minute. If your car gets hungry, we even have a gas station on site. And you already know that Starbucks in a farm fresh is only one of many ways that food gets to our table here in this area. For example, if you want to buy stuff in bulk, a lot of stuff cheaply, you go to BJ's, a large wholesaler. Or if you want stuff that might be, shall we say, a bit more healthy in a smaller environment, you go to Trader Joe's. So we know all about supermarkets, right? Well, are these supermarkets? Where are the shelves and prices? Or more importantly, where is the food? So now we have to ask ourselves two basic questions. What are the different types of economies that allow for all of these different ways to get food to customers? And how do these different economies work? With that said, let's take a look and go to the next slide. All of the economic systems we'll talk about today are built on this cycle of production and consumption. Who are the business owners? What natural resources are being used? What goods are being produced? Who's making those goods? How or where are those goods being made? And who is consuming those goods? So all economic systems address three basic economic questions. What will be produced? Who will produce it? And for whom will it be produced? In other words, how does each economic system fill in this chart? And as you can imagine, each type of economy answers the three basic questions differently. However, there is one universal characteristic of all major economic systems, one thing that binds them all together. No country relies exclusively on markets to deal with the economic problem of scarcity. In other words, there is no such thing as a pure economy. There will be some involvement from the government or the ruler on how this economy works. Go to the next slide. The first economy we'll look at is a traditional economy, also known as a primitive economy, and it works exactly like it sounds. Economic decisions are based on custom and historical precedent. In other words, how have goods been traditionally produced and distributed, and goods are traded by bartering. I give you something, you give me something. There is no money being exchanged between two people. People, by the way, often perform the same type of work as their parents and grandparents, regardless of ability or potential. And finally, there is little surplus or extra stuff produced. We call this subsistence. And if there is any surplus, it's given to the ruler. So, what does a traditional economy look like? This is a feudal manner from back in the dark ages of Europe. It was so bad in Europe that people came together on somebody's property and they made the following deal. The manor lord is the person in charge, and he gives land to vassals. They own the land, and then we have knights. Those are the guys in the shining armor who protect the manor. Those people in turn protect the serfs. They grow the crops. These are very poor people who grow the crops and are allowed to keep enough of the food they grow just to survive. All the other food goes back to the knights, who collects the food for the vassals who own the land. They take what they need and they give the surplus to the manor lord who is in charge. We call this feudalism, and it is an example of a traditional economy. Go to the next slide. To understand the next economic system, you have to be able to speak French. No. But we are going to talk about laissez-faire, or the free market economy. In a free market economy, all property and resources are privately owned, and supply and demand are freely set by producers and consumers. A lot of people call this pure capitalism. Almost, but not quite. There will be one key difference between pure capitalism and a free market economy. So let's look for that as we talk about how free market economies demonstrate the following characteristics. We have profit motive. That's the motivation for producers to maximize their profits. In other words, how much money can I make when I produce a good and sell it to a consumer? But we also have competition. Producers compete with one another for a consumer's business, which drives the market to economic equilibrium or stability that balances the demand for products against the supply. What does that look like? Let's check out this graph. On the bottom, we have the quantity of goods. At the left, we have no goods being made, and as we go farther to the right, we have more goods being made. Then there's that other line that goes from bottom to top. That's price. At the bottom, goods cost nothing, and as you go farther up the price arrow, goods cost more. So here's how it works. The red line is the demand line. If you make too many goods after a while, you've put so many goods on the market that there's not enough consumers to buy them. When that happens, demand exceeds supply, and the producers can't make any money. Then there's the supply line, or the blue line. If producers charge too much money for their goods, it costs so much that consumers can't afford the good, and supply exceeds demand. You don't have anybody who can actually buy the thing you are producing. So what we want is equilibrium, or the sweet spot, where producers can make the most money for the good they produced, but consumers can still pay for that good. There are three other things we need to know about free market economy. Consumer sovereignty is when consumers and not producers determine what products benefit them the most, thus requiring producers to monitor the needs of individuals. You can make any product you want, but if the consumer doesn't want to buy that product, you're not making any money. Then we have individual choice. Producers and consumers may enter, be part of, or leave the market at their choice and at any time. You want to go to the Barbie shop as a consumer? Go right on in. You can buy goods there, you could look around, you could leave and never come back. It's your choice. And you could also own the Barbie shop and one day decide, I'm not making enough money doing this, I'm closing my door. Finally, here's the difference between a free market economy and pure capitalism. There is minimal government involvement in the economy of a free market economy. In other words, the only fair is laissez-faire. Minimal government involvement in the free market. Go to the next slide. Our third economy is a command economy, and in a command economy there is central ownership, usually by the government, of all property and resources. Or as the Beatles once sang about, if you want to see a command economy, go back to the USSR, or in more modern times, go visit the island of Cuba. A command economy is a centrally planned economy. Here's how it works. The central authority assigns quantitative or specific production goals and allots or assigns raw materials to productive enterprises. We're going to tell you how much you're going to produce, and we're going to tell you how much stuff you're going to get to make the goods we tell you how to produce. Politicians decide how much should be consumed and how much should be invested into the economy. So it looks like this. The politicians are controlling the economy at the very top, and everything underneath it works the way the politicians want. This is much different than a free market economy where the politicians, the government, have very minimal impact on how the economy works. But here's the thing. China has developed a quasi-command economy in which entrepreneurs and consumers are being given some freedom and how they will participate in a centrally planned economy. We have communism capitalism. Who knew that this would work? Now, with a free market economy, there is minimal government involvement, which can be a problem. Command economies also have a problem, and that is lack of consumer choice. Consumers can only buy the goods presented to them by the central authority. This is the loaf of bread, this is the only loaf of bread, and you're going to buy this loaf of bread. And you're also going to buy it for a price. But unlike in a free market economy, prices are used to account for the use of goods by the citizens for the year, not to set the equilibrium price as seen in a market economy. Oh, you have enough money for the year, and when you use your dollar, that's the government making sure that that dollar they allotted to you has been used. Sounds great, except when you have shortages, which occur when the central authority incorrectly predicts the needs of the citizens. So in a lot of command economies, we see pictures like this, where there's not enough food on the shelves, or this, where there are lines of people waiting to get supplies. Go to the next slide. Our final economic system is a mixed economy or regulated capitalism, and this one you know well because it's what we use here in the US of A, in all Western countries, and in China too. Even China is a mixed economy, and as the name suggests, we're going to take some stuff from the free market system and some stuff from the command system, and we're going to mix them together. In a mixed economy, individuals, like those nice people who just bought that house, and businesses, like General Electric, the largest company on earth, own property and resources and make decisions for the private sector. The government is the owner of property and resources and the decision maker for the public sector. That includes the military, public services and utilities, parks and government property, all of those things. So one part of the economy is private individuals and businesses doing private things. The other part of the economy is the government doing public things. There's some other things as well. Producers and consumers may freely leave some parts of the market. Supermarkets, car companies, etc. They go out of business. But they may not freely leave others without government approval. Things like banks, health insurers, and hospitals. For example, Blockbuster, gigantic DVD rental company, goes out of business. Happens all the time. But if you have a failed bank that's highly regulated, the government will control the failure of that bank and what happens to the assets or the money in that bank. Finally, the government's role is greater than in a free market economy and less than in a command economy. The government has a greater impact on the economy as producer and supplier, as well as market regulator. That's it for this lecture, and I look forward to seeing you in class.